Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our Visual Workplace webinar. My name is Rhonda Covera. I have been with Visual Workplace now for over 20 years, and we've taken an opportunity to develop a series of webinars to help companies take a deeper dive into visual management. Today we're going to be talking about visual dashboards, and really what we want to drive home is the ability to measure things, manage them, and improve them. So we're going to take you through today just some slides. Today's slides presentation, probably just a little bit over a half hour. I'm here with Mark Thompson.
Hello, everybody.
Mark's driving things on the back end. He keeps things between the lines for me. And he's going to let you know how we're going to handle questions for the webinar.
Yeah, if you guys notice on the right-hand side or at the top of the screen, depending on how you're viewing this, there is a menu there. In that menu is a chat section as well as a question section. Feel free to ask in either place. I'll be monitoring both, but we hope to have questions to answer at the end of the webinar.
Yeah, so please feel free, as you're thinking of them, send them to Mark, and we'll capture them at the end, so you don't have to remember when we get done with this in a half hour or so. Also want to just mention that if there's information here, don't feel like you've got to take a lot of notes and write some things down. We will be sending early next week a link to everyone that attended the webinar to a landing page. On that landing page, you'll be able to download the PowerPoint presentation, so you'll have all of the images, all the content, speaker notes will all be in there. So if you want to share that with others in your organization or on your team, feel free to make it your own. I give you permission. If you'd like to listen to the webinar again, or again have somebody on your team that you'd like to share some of my commentary, you'll be able to listen to that audio version as well. And we'll have some downloads, some things that you can use to kind of get you squared away with your dashboard. So again, don't feel like you've got to take a lot of notes. We'll make everything available for you at the end of the presentation, or early next week when we convert the video from today. So again, my name is Rhonda Covera. I'm here with representing Visual Workplace. We have a series of webinars that I'll show you and where we're at in that series. But for now, we're going to talk about, just briefly, for those of you who might be attending our webinar for the first time, just a quick background about Visual Workplace. We've been providing visual management and continuous improvement communications to manufacturing companies for over 20 years. We started our business by presenting our mobile in-house sign shop. That gives companies the opportunity to make some of the signage themselves and save a tremendous amount by doing so, if you have those resources internally to do that. If not, we're here to help you on the back end with any custom signs or banners that you might need for your facility. And then we also have a variety of continuous improvement visual control products that are more of a do-it-yourself that you can use and just bring to your Kaizen events or present that to your team. So we try to give you lots of options as far as visual communication and visual management products. So for today, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about visual dashboards. I think, Mark, you said August, the next Thursday, is it the 9th? Okay, so here's a list of the 6 webinars that we have in the series. Today we're going to be talking about visual dashboards. The next webinar is coming up Thursday, August 9th, and we're going to be talking about visual management tools, and we'll focus a lot on the mobile in-house sign shop. So if you'd like to learn more about that product and some of the things that you can do that for implementing visual management, that would be a great webinar to attend. And Mark will get that up on our website, and we'll be sure to send out some invitations throughout the month between now and then. So if you want to sign up yourself or pass it on to others in your network, that would be great. So for today, we're going to focus in on visual dashboards. And what we want to do is we want to cover some strategies for creating visual dashboards. And we're going to give you some methodology to consider when you're in the process of creating some of your scoreboards and dashboards. Next we're going to walk you through some best practice examples. And again, these are just little ticklers, little tips and tricks that you can use to implement on some of the visual management boards that you might be creating. And then we're going to talk to you today through some of the tools that we have in our toolbox and products that you can use for creating some of these. And again, we're strong advocates of providing things that you can do yourself or providing products that you can lean on us to help you create. So again, we'd like to give you lots and lots of options. So next we're going to talk about planning your rollout. And that probably sounds a little bit silly. It's like, why is there so much planning involved when considering your visual dashboards or your scoreboards? Well, it's been my experience that just like with developing any new process, visual dashboards and scoreboards, we need to put a little bit of thought and planning into creating these before we just throw them out there into that manufacturing or work area, because again, without any plan and rollout, it's going to be a colossal fail. So we want to make sure, and I've just got some steps here, you know, it's not such a formal process, but it's certainly things that you should consider if you're going to be creating some of these in your own work environment. So first I want to talk about going to see, and I'm going to dig deeper into each one of these, but I want to give you the highlights on what this plan looks like. And again, it's going to where the work is done to make sure that what you're thinking about and your plans are suitable for that work environment. Next, we're going to talk about who cares. This is a little bit of marketing, and I talk about all the time in continuous improvement. We have to do marketing. We have to engage people to want to participate in continuous improvement. And usually when we're talking about visual dashboards, it's because we want to collect information, we want to analyze it, and we want to make improvements. So this is why we need to understand who cares. So if you're going to rely on others, we've got to make sure we've taken that into consideration. Next, we want to make sure we design for change, because I guarantee you the first time you put this out there, it'll probably change. Next, we want to make sure we have trained those involved in participating in collecting this data, and we want to create feedback loops to make sure that we understand where we need to make changes and improvements. So again, those are the highlights, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of a deeper dive on each one of these categories, and then we'll jump right into some of the best practices. So first, when we talk about go see, we want to go to where the work is done. You don't want to sit at your desk and plan this rollout and hope it all goes well. We want to make sure that we understand what we're trying to achieve, what are the outcomes, is the data readily available, because you may want to collect something that is very complicated and difficult to gather. So again, understanding that before we get started is critical. We want to, and this is something that everybody forgets, because we come up with this master plan, we put it in place into a work area, but we don't understand the impact that collecting this information is going to have on the work that actually has to be done. So again, it's making sure that we understand, and we're trying to sell this a little bit. So we want to understand all the obstacles that might come into play. Next, what I hear 9 times out of 10 is we don't have space to put something like that. It just is going to take up too much room. So before you get too far ahead of yourself, make sure that you've got a location planned out that this information will reside, and it will be in a place that it's easy to gather the information and not create more work or more hardship on the operators or those that you're intending to help you gather this information. So again, get up, go out, go see. Figure out what you want to have happen and how that's going to impact that work area. Next, we want to talk about who cares. Well, it sounds like a little crass, but again, we want to market this. We want people to be engaged. You can't stand out there and collect this data 8 hours a day, 3 shifts a day. And so we need to engage others to help us. So again, understanding what you're trying to achieve and creating a little bit of a sale with those who are going to try and collect this information. And you start by looking at the standard. Is standard to measure against? Everybody always wants to know what the score is. Am I ahead or behind? So if you don't have a standard and you're just collecting data to establish a standard, well, that's a good thing to know. But it does have an impact. Next, we want to talk about how is this dashboard and the data we're collecting going to drive improvement. You're going to have to explain this to somebody because you want them to be engaged in this continuous improvement. So again, who's going to be impacted by the improvement in the data that's collected? And we want to, I would encourage you to create a huddle meeting around this visual dashboard and scoreboard. You know, review it with the team, review it either at least per shift, per day, per week, so that you understand that you're getting the information that you need, it's meeting your expectations and your goals, and again, you want to make sure that you have engaged others to help you with this. And then what you want to do, and this is sometimes it may come at different points in the process, but you want to be able to understand, you know, with regards to who cares, how are we going to share this with different levels within the organization? So again, if it's driving improvement or if it's helping to establish a standard, sharing that information will be important too, because that really does impact those that care about that, whether it be your operations team, your quality team, different aspects of your organization. Next, this is where we come in, and we'll talk a little bit more as we start to look at some of the best practice examples. But you want to design for change, because you're going to make some assumptions on the frequency that you want to collect the data, who's going to be collecting the data, and so if you want to make some adaptations to it, you want to make sure that you haven't broke the bank on this extensive system and you need to make a change because all of a sudden there's been a shift and you need to collect some different types of information. So again, understanding the frequency of the data collection is the first starting point for this change. You know, and how will the dashboard change if needed? Again, you just want to keep these in the back of your mind. It may not happen or it may happen, but you want to think about that before you spend a lot of money and find that you've got to make some changes. You know, what is the construction of your dashboard? There's static dashboards where you're actually collecting and handwriting data onto some type of dry erase surface or some type of report, something like that. Or there might be ways to collect it electronically where the operators don't have to be involved and it's a little bit more automated in the data collection. So making some assumptions and considerations for that are important in the beginning. Next, we want to understand what we're going to do with the data that's collected. How are we going to archive it, and how are we going to analyze it? If it's static data, is it a photo, a scan? Can we generate reports? If it's electronic data, it's a lot easier to analyze. So you need to understand how you want to analyze that data that's collected, and that will help support your change and your improvement. Next, we're going to assume that you've made all these decisions, you've gone to where the work is done, you understand, design for change, you understand the impact, and now we need to make sure we have to do some training. And again, a little bit where the marketing comes into, because if you're relying on others, we want to make sure that the data we're collecting is accurate. And that's the biggest risk that we can expect if we don't properly train the people on what we're looking for. And it's defining this, to some degree as standard work, selling what we're trying to do and defining who's going to be responsible for collecting the data. And it's not only who, but when and how often. Sometimes you'll find that, you may be benchmarking or utilizing some templates or things that other locations may be at, and you'll want to, look at the opportunity of using web meetings to kind of share that data. But again, it's part of that training that you want to make sure you're planning and understanding that everyone on the team knows what the expectations are, they understand what the goals and objectives are, and there's no question, and the data is going to be there for you to be analyzed. Next, after we put all this in place, we want some feedback loops to see how things are really working. So we started out by, in the beginning, go see. Now we're ready to go ask. We want to get the feedback to see what's working well, hits or misses, and what's not. As part of this feedback loop, you want to set a time frame for evaluation. Your supervisor, your team leads, operations manager, again, keep them involved and make sure that you're sharing this feedback with them, because this is when you're going to determine whether you need to make some changes or not. And hopefully we've designed for change, and it'll be seamless. But again, that's all part of this process. And part of the feedback loop is looking at those expectations that you set out initially and comparing the objectives and where you're actually at with this information and data collection. Then we're going to look at how the data is summarized. It's important to not only provide, when we talk about a feedback loop, we want to have those collecting the data give us feedback, but you too need to give feedback back to the team on some of the analysis that you're seeing. So how is that data going to be summarized, and how is it going to be shared with the entire team? That'll be very important. And finally, we're back to, do you need to make any changes? Are there skews in your data? Are there things that are happening that are just not giving you the results that you expected? And you may have to make some changes and do an overhaul. But during that training process, that's when you make sure you tell people that you're going to ask for feedback, and you won't hesitate to make changes as needed. And that's where their feedback can come in extremely valuable. So again, this takes us through that process of planning that rollout. And I don't want it to seem complicated, but it's just a simple thought process that you can use for developing a more effective visual management system for dashboards and scoreboards. Okay. Now we're going to take you in to some best practice examples. Excuse me. And here we're going to just talk about, first and foremost, I talk a lot about manufacturing, but we have a lot of healthcare organizations, distribution centers, many different types of organizations that are using visual management tools to drive improvement. So in your organization, think about where else besides manufacturing can you use these dashboards and scoreboards. There might be opportunities in warehousing, manufacturing, maintenance, quality, even in HR, they can definitely find applications for this. So it's just important to open up your eyes. If you're finding some successes and you've got a team of people that you have an opportunity to share some of those successes with, definitely do so, because you can really open up the eyes of others as you're stepping through this. So as my point here is, visual dashboards, you want to take some consideration into design. So here's a picture I came across, and if you have teenage children, you'll find this very applicable. Again, if we could only get them to do the things that we want them to do when we're not looking, life would be just great. But the point here is get creative. Figure out ways to make some of your boards interesting if possible, and I'm going to give you some of those examples. The more interesting that you can make it, and you don't have to be a graphic designer or an art major, but just talk to your team and see if you can get some ideas, and it could be combinations of colors and discs and dials and lots of different things. But the more interest that you can create on your dashboards, the more engagement I can guarantee that you're going to have. So here's an example. This is a thermometer board. So it's a little less than traditional than just lines and charts on a dry erase board. The thermometer boards give an at-a-glance view of where you're at to your goal. And so, again, a combination of color, using some different materials, different combinations, they can work very well. Both boards that you see here, for these customers, they were created with our mobile and health science shop. So we definitely have tools. When you look at things like this, you're like, oh, those look great, but gosh, I don't have the tools to make them look that way. And rest assured, we'll give you some ideas on that. But again, this is a thermometer board is a great opportunity, or a great way to creatively change up how you're displaying your data results. In this next dashboard, which doesn't really look like a dashboard, was a very creative way. I wish I could take credit for it, but again, a lot of the things that you see in this presentation are things that our customers developed and shared with us. They're, like proud kids at school. When they make something that looks super cool, they want to share it with everyone. And so we've had an opportunity to be able to turn around and share these things with you. But this was a safety KPI board, and they called this Safety SAM. And this was at the entrance of a Toyota manufacturing material handling facility. And what was unique about this is he may not be super cute, but at least he was wearing his safety glasses in the plant, which kept him, Safety Sam. But what they did with this particular visual is they changed the color of the hat. So as you can see here, the day that I happened to be walking through, there was a recordable injury in the plant. So they changed Safety Sam's hat from green to red. So again, it's a visual indicator that we've had a safety recordable injury in the plant. So the next shift or the next day, then Safety Sam's hat is then changed back to green. But again, it brings a lots of eyes and attention on safety. They want to make sure that everyone is working in a safe and standard method. So it was just one way that they creatively communicated what their safety performance was. And then in addition, we want to talk about taking this data and sharing it, as I stated earlier, with multi-levels of users within the plant. So they took the general information for their safety performance, and then they were able to dissect it so that we could see when the injuries happened and what time frame. And then next to it, down further from where Safety SAM was located, they had a plant layout which indicated where these safety incidents were happening. So it was a combination of repurposing the same information, but in different ways for different users. And that was the point that I was trying to illustrate when we were going through that earlier. In this next dashboard, again, it doesn't look like a dashboard, and this is where I give them, an A for creativity. But this was, again, in that material handling plant for Toyota. And what they were doing, this was in their finished goods area, and they had created this color-coded system with these cones. And if things were coming off the production line and there were repairs or things that needed to be inspected, they would place a colored cone on top of the lift truck. And that indicated what department was responsible. So their leadership team could walk by and they could see at a glance, in this area, which was kind of a large area because these are not small finished good items, but they could tell at a glance how things were, which departments had what types of issues generated from it. So then I was in this plant, I went back 6 months later, and I walked by the same area, and this is what I saw. So when I talk about design for change, this is a perfect example. They wanted to see at a glance at the aisle instead of looking back into this area where all these lift trucks were. So as you can tell from here, there were 3 yellow cones missing. That meant that there were 3 quality assurance issues on lift trucks in that area behind them. And so again, this is more for the leadership team, but it gave an at-a-glance look for a very untraditional visual dashboard. So again, these were just examples to try and show you that a dashboard is not always just a straight-up dry erase board. You can use lots of different materials to create a very impactful event. This is something that I like to share with everybody, and this is not a mugshot, I want to be clear, but I was walking through a facility. It was a Nestle's water plant, and it's always been my pet peeve when I'm walking through a facility and I see dashboards and I see data that is missing, or they stopped collecting it 2 years ago, but they never took down the board or the clipboard, the data sheets, whatever. What they did here is they put on every visual management board in their facility, they attached a magnet with a photograph of the person who owned the data on that board. So as a supervisor or an operations team leader, whatever, if there was a question, they could look to see who the owner of that board was, and they knew who to go ask. So it really created some unintended accountability, because your name is on the board, and if it's not updated and it's not maintained correctly, I'm sure somebody's going to come and see you and talk to you about it. So it was a simple way to kill two birds with one stone and create efficient information being displayed at all times. And this one, just a slight nuance here. Creating a color coding your data can sometimes make it easier to retrieve that data. If you're a quality professional and there's lots of information in work cells and you're trying to find your information, sometimes establishing color like you see here can help make that data retrieval process and that impact a little bit more efficient. Next, just a quick recommendation here. Where possible, and I know this isn't possible because we talked about space and sometimes the limitations that you have on space, but I've seen companies where they've taken their training matrices and they've taken them out of an Excel spreadsheet, off the server, out of a binder, and they've displayed them visually in their work areas. And what they have found in the feedback that I've received is that employees will be more engaged in expanding their experience and their knowledge when their training matrices are displayed and everybody's looking at that. So just food for thought. Next, I want to show you this one again, A for creativity. This was a themed board that they used to keep track of production, and somebody on the team really liked golf, so they used a golf theme. And so on the right, you'll see the scoreboard where they're actually, collecting the data. But on the left is where they were actually using golf balls, and you could see hole markers where every time they met a certain production level, they'd drop a ball in there. So you could see at a glance how close you were to your goal. Fun project. This example, some of you might be using A3 documents for continuous improvement projects and developing those process controls. Opportunity might be, you see these a lot on a server, large 11 by 13s. Sometimes it's hard to see the data. Consider maybe taking all or some of that information and turning that into a dashboard and taking that right to the area at the point of use where the A3 might be being evaluated. Here's another example for drawing attention. We have some document holders that will allow you to, and this may not work for every application, but if you're within the parameters or you're meeting the goals and expectations, as you see here, they used green document holders. Now, they were having some struggles with cost, so they put that data sheet in a red document holder. So if you're using Gemba walks and you want to be able to utilize and make the time in those Gemba walks more efficiently and talk about the things, instead of going through and saying safety's okay, quality's okay, delivery's okay, but hey, we're having a struggle with cost, you go right to, oh, this one's red, let's talk about this right now and figure out what the corrective actions are. So one possibility for you. Again, another little bit of creativity added to an employee suggestion board. They wanted to make sure they were keeping track of who was participating, which projects were in process, and which were complete. And again, they were able to use that. This is almost like a thermometer board, but it's at a glance, because sometimes, in those employee suggestion programs, we wonder, hey, I submitted something, but I don't know what happened, don't know what the status is, did we ever decide to do it? So again, this might give you some ideas to better display that information. This is something KPI boards were doing a lot of, and lots of companies are wanting to have these look professional. We custom print these here at our location. We can have whatever KPIs that you want, customize these. We've got a link on our website to a lot of different KPI boards that we've done for other companies. So if you're looking for some ideas, I would definitely hit up on our website and you can see some different examples. But again, putting things, whether it be for an entire organization or by department, It gives you an at-a-glance look, and it shares the information with everybody on your team. This next visual dashboard, this is, I don't see this utilized a lot, but for those that are trying to establish leadership standard work, here's a template that you might find useful. Some organizations are wanting to create transparency with what supervisors' metrics are, what their daily responsibilities are, weekly. So again, this is something that you might see in a supervisor's office or in an operation manager's office. But again, it just shines a light on the things that are important and the priorities they have before them. I talked a minute ago about Gemba Walk. We've got, if you are using Gemba Walk and you're looking for a way to document observations, corrective actions, and action plans, we've definitely got some ideas that we could help you with there, and putting those at different points through on the route of your Gemba Walk. Sorry, I lost the word. Next, we've got just a little bit of a little mini business unit. This is encompassing of a lot of information. You can see there's multiple shifts, but you got information that they're developing for work standards, Kaizen events, action plans. You know, they're wanting just a central location to communicate what's happening in a particular area. So there's lots of different ways you can do it, but it may be something that you might find useful in your organization. Now I'm going to run you through some products that we have for creating these visual dashboards in your facility. We're going to start out with just the straight up dry erase boards. We have framed and unframed, so it gives you a couple of different combinations. Why you would have one or over the other, cost. The unframed versions are a little less costly, and if you're putting them in manufacturing, they have the same performance. But it's an opportunity to reduce costs if you're looking for that. We have been promoting our information center, so if space is an issue and you don't have space for a 4x8 or a 4x6 board, wrap it around, condense the space, and you can get the same information. We've got two sizes. We've got the smaller size here, and then we've also got a larger size that we have available too if you're looking for a way to condense space. Here's just a couple examples of some of the custom dry erase boards that we've done. You know, and it can be complicated to very simple. This one in the middle it's really just an information board to let everyone know on a particular shift in receiving what's been picked up and what hasn't. So again, it can be very simple, or it can be, as you see here, the Temper Sealy board. That is more their PCDA plan for improvement. So, but we can take your Excel spreadsheets and your ideas and we can make them look spectacular. Again, wanted to point out that we do have on our website some pre-printed versions. So if you're not sure what you want and you're looking for some ideas, you can take a look at our website, and a lot of them relate to 5S, problem solving, all kinds of different boards that you might want to collect information for that. And what I wanted to point out here is if you see something on our website that's close to what you want, we can customize it for you, and whatever the size that you see on the website, that's what you'll pay for a custom dry erase board as well. So we do not charge for more words. You know, costs only change when the size changes. So again, it gives you an opportunity to add your logo and, you know, do some different things and at least get the ideas flowing. We have some mobile dry erase board options. So again, you know, some of the options, you know, start with a wall mount version of a dry erase board if that's what you're looking for, or we also have some of the mobile versions for you available if that's something that you're looking for. Next, we're going to talk about dry erase overlays, and these are been an extremely popular product for us because for many of you, you probably already have dry erase boards in your facility, and you'd just like to make the graphics and the information on the dry erase boards look more professional and not so hand-drawn. If that's the case, we've come up with an overlay that will fit on top of your existing dry erase boards. We'll print it, we'll put all the colors, logos, anything that you want on it, and you then, either magnetic or non-magnetic version, just apply that to your dry erase board. And then the surface that you see becomes your dry erase surface. And you can take these into meetings if you'd like, or you can share them with other locations, and it's a great tool for collecting information, and they're very inexpensive as opposed to buying new dry erase boards. The next, just real quick, is, as you probably would imagine, we've got some other dry erase board accessories. This is our Quick Grid. These are magnetic and non-magnetic versions, and they stick right to your existing dry erase boards, but they're quick and dirty. You can add your own text, but they have some cells that are pre-designed. You can make them larger, can't make them smaller, but might be a quick option for you. And then we've got a whole series of magnets and document holders and other accessories that will support, whatever you're trying to do to display your information. And then I just wanted to share, I had talked to you earlier about, in this process for planning out your rollout, determining whether or not your dry erase boards would be static or electronic. I don't have any information in this presentation. We're just in the process of establishing a supplier for electronic displays. It's been a long time search for us to be able to offer both printed, custom, static dry erase boards and visual dashboards. But then for those that really want an electronic display that ties into the data that you might already be collecting on your server, we can do that as well. So just reach out if that's something you want to talk about. We can get you some more information about that. Okay. Next, if you're looking for a deeper dive and just want to keep learning and talk about dry erase boards and Obeya rooms, here's a couple of reference articles. So when we send this PowerPoint out to everybody next week, you can click on these links and it'll take you to those articles in Industry Week. And you're welcome to take a deeper dive into that. So we're almost at the end. Again, going back to our visual management series webinars, today we ran through visual dashboards, and coming up next will be do-it-yourself visual management, and that will be probably 4 weeks from today, Thursday, August 9th at 2 p.m. And then just as a reminder, you'll get a link to a landing page, and you'll have some reference information that you can learn some more about visual dashboards. My email is here as well, and if you have some questions after the webinar and just need some ideas or some coaching, some direction, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to help you in any way that we can. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
We've got a couple of questions. How do you set expectations by your workforce? How do you help them understand that it will take time to produce change and that they need to keep providing data?
That is the almighty question. Where possible, I would take and find some examples of some continuous improvement projects that you may have already completed. Sometimes when you work in one department, you don't necessarily know what happens in other areas of your facility. So again, sharing those reference stories with others can be very helpful, as again, it's marketing, it's creating engagement, defining the problem, defining the outcome that you hope to achieve can be an important part of that as well. And again, if you can make it a little fun and your visual is a little bit more interesting, it's kind of nice. Maybe there's a party and you celebrate, and you just try to do as much as you can to, but again, monitoring it and making sure that, frequently you're getting the information that you need to. Otherwise, it'll get stale and all that work goes for naught.
That's pretty good. Here's a pretty good question from Jason. We have daily huddles. How do you engage your workforce to increase participation? Usually turns into me speaking for 10 to 15 minutes. How do I change that dynamic? Mark,
what do our huddles look like?
Our huddles are a little on the crazy side. Every group has a day, and we lead the huddle on our day. Rhonda doesn't usually speak until we've produced our information, then she will ask follow-up questions and, engage other areas, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. So our huddles are pretty much changing every day.
Yep. So again, because there was a time when it was just me talking, so I totally get what you're saying. So, trying to, we set 90-day goals, just small little things that each person works on the team. So we ask people to be more engaged in those daily huddles, and you might say, okay, Susan, you've got tomorrow. I want you to bring something great for us. But you probably, we have a certain set day, and everybody can see what team has what. But again, give them, not everybody likes to talk, and they'll be in the bathroom just, with a stomach ache. So it's finding some things to celebrate and making sure there's a platform for sharing things that are getting in the way, and making sure. But yeah, engagement and daily huddles can be hard because it can just be one solo person just running it all.
Last question that I have right now so far, this is from Josh. Can I combine two of your dry erase boards, like the safety cross and a CI action items board? What kind of custom charge is that going to be?
Oh, there's no charge. Everything is based on size. So if you look on our website or in our catalog, whatever the size is, that's the cost. So whatever information you want on there, I don't care. I don't care if you want multiple colors. I don't care what words you want. It's all based on size, so you don't have to guess. There's no secret setup fees or charges or whatever. It's just straight up easy. Okay. That's it? Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody again for joining us today. Hopefully you're having a very blessed and safe summer. We'll have these landing pages out to you Monday, Tuesday next week. We've got to convert the audio file to digital, whatever that means. And but again, in the meantime, you've got my email address. If there's something you're thinking about or something you need some help with, we'd be more than happy to help you. And on a side note, if you've got other people on your team that you would like to run through this webinar and do it more live and interactive with some questions, again, reach out. I've done these before. Well, I'll do them just for a small group for a particular company and on any of the subjects that we have in our webinar series. So you're welcome to tap us for that. There's no cost to that. It's just we've got the content. We've been blessed to have all these ideas shared with us through our coaching, and we just want to share it with you guys. So again, thank you so much.